Welcome to 1969, a year of triumphs and tragedy that's often seen as a turning point in world history. Hey everyone, my name is Tom and I'll be your educator for this video. Now let's take a dive into the last year of the 1960s. To start off the year, on January 20th, Richard Nixon is sworn in as the 37th President of the United States. Nixon carried 32 states in the previous November election and was already a household name from being vice president from 1953 to 1961. One of his key issues on his campaign was the Vietnam War. Nixon campaigned on Vietnamization, a policy which would slowly withdraw U.S. troops from Vietnam while focusing on giving aid and training the South Vietnamese Army. Nixon is not the only notable politician to take over that year. 1 month later, Yasser Arafat became the chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization, also known as the PLO, and he would serve from 1969 to 2004. Also in the Middle East, there's a bloodless coup in Libya that ousts King Idris and brings in Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi would stay in power for over 40 years. Outside of politics, there's some great sports and entertainment moments. 1969 is the year that Sesame Street makes its debut. UCLA wins its third consecutive NCAA basketball championship by defeating Purdue. And in baseball, the New York Mets upset the Baltimore Orioles in the World Series. This team is now known as the Miracle Mets. In September, the Beatles released their 11th studio album, Abbey Road. This is their second to last album that they would release together. Now, while there was some quality entertainment, 1969 is remembered for its protests and activism. On February 13th in Montreal, chaos erupted as the FLQ bombed the Montreal Stock Exchange, sending shockwaves through the nation. Their mission was to create an independent Quebec through violent means. Over in Japan, a fierce battle between riot police and university students broke out at Tokyo University. A total of 757 people were injured. The troubles began in Northern Ireland as British troops were deployed to restore order following 3 days of political violence. This would mark the beginning of a 37-year operation known as Operation Banner. A different kind of revolution was underway in New York City's Stonewall Inn. In June, after years of marginalization and oppression, the patrons of Stonewall refused to tolerate discrimination from the New York Police Department. 4 days, protesters clashed with law enforcement, demanding recognition in a society that often rendered them invisible or criminalized their very existence. Across the country, Bloody Thursday took place at People's Park in California. Berkeley Police Department clashed with protesters at the site, using deadly force. Governor Ronald Reagan eventually sent in the State National Guard to release tear gas on anti-war protesters. Not all protests were violent, though. Beatles frontman John Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono spent their honeymoon bed-in for peace in Amsterdam. A few weeks later, they conducted their second bed-in, held at Queen Elizabeth Hotel in Montreal, Quebec. Lennon composes and records the song Give Peace a Chance during this event. Over in Massachusetts, U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy, who was also the brother of former President JFK, drives off a bridge into the pond after leaving a party. This ends up killing the passenger Mary Jo Kopechnik. Kennedy does not report this accident for the next 9 or 10 hours. In the middle of summer, on the orders of Charles Manson, members of the Manson family invade Los Angeles' home of film director Roman Polanski and murder his pregnant wife, the actress Sharon Tate, and 4 others. But there are 2 very notable events from this summer that I want to go over. On July 16th, Apollo 11, crewed by Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins, lift off from Cape Kennedy in Florida and head towards the moon. 4 days later, at 10:56 p.m., an estimated 650 million people worldwide watch in awe as Neil Armstrong takes his first historic step on the surface of the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Now, I would be remiss not to mention this one. In the summer of '69, amidst a backdrop of social change and cultural revolution, a legendary event unfolds in a small town in Bethel, New York, the Woodstock Music Festival. It's a gathering of peace, love, and music that would define a generation. From the electrifying sounds of Jimi Hendrix's guitar to the soulful melodies of Janis Joplin's voice, Woodstock was a showcase of the era's top music talents. each leaving an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. Woodstock was more than just a concert, it was a cultural phenomenon, a temporary city of peace where strangers became friends, sharing food, stories, and experiences under the open sky. Woodstock symbolizes a countercultural movement, a rejection of societal norms, and a call for a more peaceful, harmonious world. But despite these calls for peace, the Vietnam War was still in full swing. On August 4th, in a secret meeting in Paris, U.S. Representative Henry Kissinger meets with a North Vietnamese representative to begin peace negotiations. The two are unable to come to any form of agreement. On September 5th, Lieutenant William Cowley is charged with 6 counts of premeditated murder for the 1968 My Lai massacre. This is where American soldiers slaughtered 109 innocent Vietnamese citizens. Over the next couple of months, hundreds of thousands of people took place in the moratorium to end the war in Vietnam. Countless protests, sit-ins, marches, and other demonstrations across the United States took place. Nixon's strategy of Vietnamization required a lot of moving parts. His plan was not an immediate pullout, it was a gradual reduction in troop presence. This means the US still needed soldiers to help train and equip the South Vietnamese forces to take over and fight. Like most wars, Vietnam was a complex and unpredictable one. The US still needed troops that can fluctuate based off the enemy activity and changing battlefronts. The US government desired a ready pool of soldiers just in case escalation took place. Then, on November 15, 1969, marked the largest anti-war protest in US history. Many critics at the time saw President Nixon as a liar. He pledged to begin withdrawing troops from Vietnam, but after 10 months, no withdrawals were taking place. In late November, President Nixon and Congress came to a resolution and decided to declare a draft to elect men for military service in Vietnam. Through a year of many anti-war protests and promises from President Nixon attempting to end the Vietnam War, we close out 1969 with America's young men drafted into a war. Many of them do not think that the country should be fighting.